Hello and welcome to In Talks With, the podcast which takes a deep dive into the fascinating world of visual culture. I'm your host, Danielle Radojcin, and today I'm speaking to Romy Cockx, the curator of the Man Ray and Fashion exhibition currently on show at one of my favourite museums, MoMu, the Fashion Museum in Antwerp, and I'm really thrilled to have her on the show. I spoke to Romy over Zoom, and we explored the life and work of Man Ray, one of the most innovative and influential artists of the 20th century, responsible for such iconic works as The Floating Lips, the image of the woman crying glass tears, and for his portraits of contemporaries in the exciting world of fashion and art that he moved in, including Coco Chanel, Elsa Schiaparelli, and Marcel Duchamp. And we'll be discussing his muses, including Lee Miller and Kiki de Montparnasse, and how his fashion photography was shaped by the milieu he was working in. Romy will be sharing insights into the exhibition and how it showcases the different facets of Man Ray's life and work. So sit back, relax, and join me as we delve into the fascinating world of Man Ray. Hi, Romy.
Hi.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm okay, and you?
I'm very well, thanks. Tell me where you are.
I'm in Antwerp at the Fashion Museum, MoMu.
Great. So you're in the place that we're going to be talking about. I'm interviewing you because you are the curator of a new exhibition that's recently opened at MoMu called Man Ray and Fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations. I've been looking at
you.
The catalogue and it looks incredible.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's start by going to the basics. Who was Man Ray and why did you want to do this exhibition?
Man Ray was a really versatile artist. And everybody knows him from some iconic images that he made as a photographer. Through the previous editions of this exhibition, we found out that he was also a fashion photographer, which is something we found very interesting. And we decided to try to find out more about him and his life and his relation to fashion, and also his influence on contemporary fashion designers.
So he was born in Philadelphia, 1890, then moved to New York at an early age, and tell me the story of how he came to use the name Man Ray, because I believe he was christened Emanuel Radnitsky.
Yes, that's true. Yes, his parents they came from Russia, the part that is now Ukraine. So that's where his name comes from. And as a young boy, he was a very creative child, and he dreamt of becoming a painter. And it is in 1911 that he used for the first time the name Man Ray. He used it to sign his first artwork, which was a tapestry made of clothing, textile fragments that were laying around in the house. Man Ray was born out of these textile fragments. And you see it in his early works. There is a lot of elements from tailoring, using coat hangers and pins and a sewing machine.
So, like you say, so his mother was a seamstress and his father was a tailor. So he was exposed to this language of dressmaking at a very early age.
Mm-hmm.
How did he end up then getting into fashion photography?
There is still some years in between. First, he explored modern art through the gallery of Alfred Stieglitz, which was an important photographer. At that time, he also got to know his first love, which was a Belgian woman. She was a poet. And she was a bit older than Man Ray. She had a kind of bohemic lifestyle, and also like her way of dressing. It made him dream of Europe. He was very in love with her, and they went to live together a bit outside New York in an artist colony. And while they were living together, like, she unwrapped all her stuff, and there was a lot of poetry by French writers, such as Marquis de Sade and Lautréamont. So it was she who introduced him to this language and this inspiration. She also served as a go-between him and Marcel Duchamp, the French artist he also got to know around the same periods. And through this European art, he was like, in the beginning himself, his work was more figurative painting, but then he started also getting into abstract art and also getting a bit of photographic advice from Alfred Stieglitz. And he used photography in the beginning only to catalog his own artworks, like taking pictures of them and making this archive in hope to sell his work. Also, he made, of course, pictures of her.
What was her name?
Adon Lacroix. But it was probably like, there is also the name of Donna Lacoeur, which is circulating, so it's probably her pseudonym of because she really published also her poems, and they made like also they collaborated together on a luxury little book with her poems and his drawings.
So that's interesting. So already he was experimenting in new, different kinds of media and going beyond the realms of traditional commercial photography.
Yeah, it was really the beginning of his photography, and then unfortunately their relationship didn't last. Like, they got married, but it didn't last for many years. And it was then when they were separated, he looked for a place to stay, and he found this storage room of also a seamstress, and there were a lot of leftovers from her work, and that's how he started to make his first Dada works. So abstraction is, for example, like an installation with coat hangers.
So this is kind of as a direct influence from his friendship with Duchamp, who was founder of the Dadaist movement.
He was, he's not really the founder. He was more like an important part of it. And Man Ray was also asked by Zara to send pictures to Europe. And with Duchamp, he created New York Dada, which was their wish to bring Dada to New York. But it was kind of a failure. He said also afterwards, like, there is no fertile ground for Dada in New York. So this made him dream even more of coming to Europe, which was what he did in July 1921. He took a suitcase, put all his artworks in it, and like with $100, he took the boat. At that time, Duchamp was waiting for him in Paris. He introduced him to the Dada artists, and there in Paris, he also tried to sell his artworks, but it was not really successful. So he needed some money, and he started to make photographs of the works of art of his fellow artists, and also taking their pictures, their portraits. And that's how he got into fashion photography, because from one thing came the other. Like, Jean Cocteau was photographed by him, and he introduced him to many other artists. But also, this was a time of Paris was like very, very vibrant. There were different kinds of people intermingling. The high society.
Let's dig into that a bit. So, between the wars, famously a very vibrant time, and you just mentioned Cocteau and obviously Duchamp. Who are some of the other characters that he was associating with?
with the Comtesse de Beaumont, Marie-Laure de Noailles, which was this rich society ladies. But then also he got introduced through the wife of Picabia to Paul Poiret, a famous couturier at that time. And it was there at the couture house of Poiret that he did his first fashion shoot, which was kind of amateuristic. There was not the sufficient lighting. He asked for lighting, but then the power went off. Like also the modeling, there was not, the models were like used to doing presentations, but not really fashion modeling. So he was, like when he describes it in his autobiography, he seems rather pleased with himself, but Poiret wasn't that pleased. He didn't buy the pictures, he didn't pay for them. But what he did do was buy some of Man Ray's riographs, because while he was developing the prints of the fashion shoots, he rediscovered the photogram technique, which is a technique where you put an object on a light-sensitive paper and you expose it to light, and you get this really flat black and white print, which is something Man Ray is famous for. These pictures were also published in Vanity Fair. So yeah, already from the beginning there was this mix between art photography and fashion photography. And then from this first shoot, it developed to getting regular assignments for Vogue. In 1924 it started. At that time, fashion photography was still overshadowed by fashion illustration, because the paper was still not sufficient to really get high quality fashion photographs. So it was more these socialites who presented fashion in their environment that were photographed by him, and it's not really inventive at that time. That comes later. In the 1930s, he starts working for Harper's Bazaar, the American magazine, and at that time he really starts using all the innovative procedés that he developed during the years before, and he gets the freedom to convey fashion in an artistic way, not really like showing the details of the clothing, but more the spirit of it, the way he sees it.
Is there a sense of the kind of person that he was? What was his personality like? Was he a fun person with a sense of humour? Was he popular with the people he was associating with? What's the sense you get of his personality?
Well, I think he had quite a sharp sense of humour, and then it's a bit like, I think it's a bit double. Like I also read that he was sometimes a lot to himself. He didn't really want to be famous. And then also in the way I think he addressed women, because women played an important role in his life. Like he photographed hundreds of women, of course, and then with some of them he had they had an active impact on his work. Like in the exhibition, we also speak about his relationship to Kiki de Montparnasse and to Lee Miller.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about a few of them actually, because I think, obviously you think of some of the famous faces he photographed then: Coco Chanel, Elsa Schiaparelli, Luisa Casati, famously, that she was a socialite. And then, Kiki de Montparnasse, there was obviously, for people who don't know who she was, it might be worth explaining a bit. And then I'd like to come to Lee Miller, who I think is still, maybe his most famous muse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kiki de Montparnasse was also when Man Ray came to Paris, she was also coming to Paris from the provinces, and she was from a very poor background. but she had a lot of personality. She attended a lot of the bars and the cafes from the artistic environment of Montparnasse, the quartier in Paris, the famous quartier. It was in a bar that he got to know her because the waiter didn't want to serve her because she was not wearing a hat. And Man Ray was immediately taken by her presence, and also she was really like cheeky, a bit and she was also like her way of dressing and her style, her hair, her makeup, it got his attention, and she was a painter's model, and he wanted to convince her to pose for him as a photo, for a photo. First, she didn't want to, but then, he was quite charming, I think, Man Ray. He seduced her into doing it. And, very soon they developed a passionate love affair. Apparently, she moved in with him. She took care of his agenda because he had a lot of appointments in their shared house, and she was kind of managing all this. Also the household, and then in his autobiography he's rather proud that he writes like I domesticated Kiki, because at the time she was more famous than him. She also started painting and was quite successful. Unlike him, she sold all of her paintings during openings of her. In a gallery. She also became a famous cabaretier, singing in the bars. Yeah. And by the time she was crowned Queen of Montparnasse, it was 1929. Their relationship was over because Man Ray was quite a possessive type, which links us to Lee Miller.
Yes, interesting. Because I read in your essay that it was Kiki's lips who were the original inspiration for his very famous observatory time, the lovers, the floating lips image. But carry on and tell me more about the Lee Miller connection.
Yeah, maybe the lips is also a good go in between, because he was inspired by Kiki's lips to make this painting. He explained that she when he went out in the evening, she kissed him, and when he went to the toilet later in the evening, he noticed there is some lipstick on my white shirt, and it was a way of her to claim him. So this story inspired him to make the painting, but he started it in 1932, if I'm not mistaken. And at that time, he was already connected to Lee Miller. And when he was halfway, he was already 6 months painting the painting, because it was a very big painting. And then he realized, the lips of Lee Miller are actually better suited because they have a more elongated shape. So he switched to the lips of Lee Miller. She was also a very interesting woman. She was already a fashion model in New York, quite successful, working for Condé Nast. Her father was also a photographer, and that made her interested in photography, and she wanted to become a photographer. It was the photographer Edward Steichen who said to her, okay, if you want to learn about photography, you have to go to Man Ray in Paris, which was what she did. She convinced him to take her on as an assistant. One thing led to the other. They became lovers. She developed a lot of his pictures in the darkroom, and supposedly was also the one who rediscovered the solarization technique that was perfected by Man Ray, and technique he used a lot.
That's the kind of light outline around the figure in a black and white photo. Is that what the effect of solarization?
Yeah, it's like a sort of a black line making a contour around the body, and then indeed there is the lighter background. which makes
and Lee Miller herself went on to become a successful photographer, so she must have learnt a lot from Man Ray. She ended up she covered the end of the war for Vogue, I believe, and there's a famous photograph of her in Hitler's bath.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
I think so. Their collaboration was sort of between late 1929 to 1932, was when they were sort of hanging out together in Paris.
Yes. They. I think they also explored like the I don't know, the borders of pornographic artistic photography, and you see that there is this interesting power dynamic between them. But of course, in the exhibition, we focus more on also how he they collaborated together, and she was like posing for him, and how it helped him to become better as a fashion photographer.
It's interesting, this difference between the erotic images where he sort of fetishized the female form. How do you think that theme came across in his fashion photography, if indeed you think it was in his fashion photography at all?
I think when you look at the pictures that he made from Lee Miller, often also isolating certain body parts. This is something that comes back also in his commercial photography. The tears, les larmes.
Yes,
it's a famous,
very
example.
Famous, iconic image. The glass tears on les larmes, les dieux, glass tears, 1936. That's that was originally I didn't realize. I read that was for a beauty brand, a mascara brand, I believe. That photo was taken.
Yes, indeed, it's for a mascara brand. And you see in the exhibition the picture where you see the model's face as a whole, and then the glass tears he put on top of it, and then of course the cropping and the extreme close-up of the eyes, and how also it evolved from an advertising image into a famous picture that was also published by art magazines, and how then after that it influenced contemporary fashion designers such as Dirk van Sane or Jean-Charles de Castelbajac.
And it was like this. I mean, I think his most famous images really came out during this time in the 30s. As you know, including the lips, which is probably his most enduring image, and the glass tears image. Also that the female, I don't know who it is in the photo, but the female that you see the female nude seated from behind with lines on her back that makes it look like a musical instrument.
Yeah, that's Kiki.
That's Kiki de Montparnasse. So you think of all these things, even the socialists, the photos of socialites like Nancy Cunard. And then I believe he moved back to the States just before war broke out in Europe.
Yes, I think it was. He made a lot of photos for Harper's Bazaar between 1934 and 1939. But then during the war in 1940, he did his latest photo shoot for Vogue. And then, it was really, they put like a cardboard against the windows for the bombing. And then he fled to the United States. Because it was no longer safe in Europe, and
did he continue to have a relationship with the fashion magazines during this time? Because I believe he actually moved to the West Coast for that period.
Yeah, he went to Hollywood. He didn't want to be associated with fashion photography any longer, because
Why?
he felt like in America there was, or in the United States, there was this, either you were an artist or you were a photographer, you couldn't be both. And it was something that bothered him a lot, because he still wanted, like, he kept on painting. He used the photography to finance his lifestyle, but he kept painting, and he really wanted to be appreciated as a painter. So at a certain moment, he distanced himself from the fashion photography, but the earnings that he made through fashion photography helped him to survive during those years.
Was he famous within his lifetime?
Yes, yeah. Not as famous as Dali, for example, but yes.
And I think so. He did return to Paris again in the early 50s.
In 1951 he went back.
And did he stay there until his death, which was in 1976, or was he?
Yeah, he stayed there. Like he actually, his last love was Juliette Browner. He got to know her in LA, and she was also like much younger. She was a dancer, and he convinced her to go back with him to Paris and to live in this really cold, humid studio place that he transformed into an artist studio with parachute fabrics, making these compartments, and he lived between. It was a kind of museum for himself, like with all his artworks, and then all the pictures he made, like stored in cigarette boxes. And she lived there with him, and she also played an important role in the guarding his legacy.
Why do you think his reputation has grown since his death? He's very famous still today. Would you say that's down to because of his relationship with fashion, or something else?
I think it's because the strong images. Of course, it's indeed like, it's a bit like, how to say, the surprising elements in it. It's a bit sometimes maybe a bit shocking, but it's also very sharp, and there is a sense of glamour to it, I think.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Also a slight transgressiveness in a lot of the images, or not even slight, a lot. Mm-hmm. I mean, would the images have been shocking at the time? Maybe you can give some examples of some of the more subversive images.
Yeah, I think some of the nude pictures that he made from Lee Miller, but also the way, like, he was also fascinated by mannequins. This was a sort of broader fascination for surrealist artists, because since the 19th century, like the end of the 19th century, these dress mannequins, they became more and more lifelike. So I think this gave, like, when you read about it, like, there is this, they had this, like, they instigated, or like erotic desire for some men. I think because they were, are they real? Are they not real? And if they are not real, what can we do to them? It's a bit this kind of.
So do you think that's something he was himself aroused by, or do you think it was just a theme that he was interested in exploring?
He didn't really saw himself as a sadist, but in his work he's definitely inspired by the Sade. He says because of the freedom that his works,
the Marquis de Sade,
the Marquis de Sade. But I remember this quote about like the surrealistic exhibition in 1938, where all the surrealist artists got to dress a dress mannequin, and he also got to dress one, and he also took pictures of them, and then he had this quote like, in 1938 the surrealists, they kidnapped 18 dress mannequins, and they couldn't resist. They were like submissive, and the way he speaks about it, I think it touched him a bit.
That's really interesting. And this just bringing this all back to your exhibition, what's so interesting looking at the photos and then looking at some of the images from fashion designers you've included in the catalogue is just seeing how many fashion designers he's directly inspired, from Margiela to John Galliano to even there's that famous photo in your exhibition of a Phoebe Philo for Celine jumper, but the model Stella Tennant is wearing it. I believe it's from 2012. And it's a direct copy, in fact, of a jumper Lee Miller wears in a 1930 photograph that you have alongside.
Yeah, indeed. There is a lot of inspiration on different levels, and definitely Margiela is like that was really interesting to discover, because of course as an Antwerp Fashion Museum we have a lot of Margiela in our collection. We already did several exhibitions about his work, but then seeing that the portfolio that he created, like the first collection that he created on paper and that he used to convince Jenny Meres, his business partner, to start the couture house. It's full of Man Ray references. Among the Les Larmes is like there is a photocopy of this picture, but then also the fascination with dress mannequins, the trompe-l'œil, the shadow plays. Like there is like so much, and I asked him about it, and he said like, I didn't realize for myself that I'm such a surrealist. And the spirit of Man Ray is there, and it's often like with many others on a subconscious level, which is of course something that fits into the surrealist way of thinking, and it was really interesting to.
I mean, just for the discovery that Margiela is a surrealist, it's worth it for that alone.
Yeah.
Just to even speak to Margiela about that is worth doing the whole exhibition, in my opinion. So the exhibition is on until the middle of August?
Yeah, until the 13th of August.
It's an exhibition that was previously in Paris already, I believe.
Yeah, it was first in Marseille and then in Paris, but it was without the contemporary links, and also we have used a lot of historical fashion silhouettes from our own collection. Like MoMu is well known for his collection of contemporary fashion, but it was really nice to also get these dresses from the 1920s and the 1930s from our archives, and then also I added more of the Dada artworks to it, because I thought this inspiration from his youth was really interesting to.
So are there any photos in your archives that of pieces that he photographed in Harper's and Vogue?
No, not from our own archives, but we got to loan some very important dresses from the Musée des Arts Décoratifs, from Vionnet and Louise Boulanger that he covered for Harper's Bazaar, and then also 2 dresses from Chanel that he also photographed, and one from Lanvin that he photographed in 1925 for the Pavillon de l'Élégance. That's also fascinating to see that they survived 100 years. So we are very grateful for these wonderful loans, and also we have 80 pictures from the Centre Pompidou that all came from his archives, and are
incredible. And for people who are unable to travel to Antwerp to visit the exhibition but would like to connect with it in some way, is there an online resource? Is there some online videos or images or essays?
You can find like some images on our website, and then you can also order the book online. You can find it on our website.
Brilliant. Yeah. Well, I tell you what. Why don't you send me some links and I can include them in the show notes for this episode?
Oh, Thank you so much.
Because I've only seen a PDF, but I did look at your catalogue essay, and it looks absolutely amazing. What's your favourite? Maybe we'll also include a link to Man Ray's autobiography worth reading? I haven't read it myself.
Well, it's kind of how to say. Sometimes it's a bit. I don't know the English word. Like it goes a bit in different senses, and it's a bit difficult to get the historical connections. Okay. But if you want to know more about his life, I would recommend Man Ray, American Artist, written by Neil Baldwin.
That's a great recommendation. We can put that in the notes as well. All right. Well, Romy, thank you so much.
Thank you as well.
To me. Nice, It's so interesting. I've been a massive fan of his for ages, and it's just so lovely hearing someone talking about him who's been really immersed in the experience of all his work. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a great privilege to be immersed in Man Ray's work, and thank you so much for your interest. And if you ever come to Antwerp, let me know.
I shall. Thank you. Thanks for joining me. You've been listening to In Talks with me, Danielle Radojcin. The sound and theme music is by Woogie Productions, and the artwork is by Patrick Waugh. If you enjoyed this episode, please pass it on to someone who you think might also like it. Please subscribe and leave a review. To pitch for guest ideas, you can DM me via my socials at Danielle Radojcin. Thanks for listening.